Now let's go back to Excel and let's record another macro. We'll open two files and then we'll see how the code is. Let it be called macro2. Click on OK. Go to File, Open. So I'll open this module 10 VBA events and user form. So this is one of the files which I've opened. Now I'll go back to the original file, which is VBA file. Now I'll open another file. Open. Let's open module 10 VBA.xlsm. And now again, I'll go back to my original file. Now I'll click on stop recording. And now we'll see what the VBA code translates to. So just before we jump on to the VBA code, now that we've got three files opened over here, in this particular window, we can see that there is one file, module 10 VBA events and user form, which is open. Then there is another file, module 10 VBA.xlsm. So this particular second file has 4 sheets in it. This one particular file has got 5 sheets in it. But let's just go to our workbook, which is VBA file.xlsm, and see what the VBA code was recorded. So the first action was that we have opened a workbook, module 10 VBA events and user form.xlsm. So how this has worked is workbooks.open, and then this is followed by a keyword file name, and then this is the entire path of this particular file. Then what we did, we returned to our original file, which was active window, activate next. So this automatically activated our VBA file.xlsm as we went back to it. Then when we went back to VBA file.xlsm, we opened another file, which was module 10 VBA.xlsm. And then we went back to our original file, VBA file.xlsm again. So now what I'll do, I'll just close the other two files. So let me go back. So this is one of the files which I'm closing. I'm closing module 10 VBA also. Now I'll go back to my program. Now if I'll run this, both the files which were earlier opened, they will open now again. When I'll click on run, so as you can see from here now that I've got the events and user form which is open, and I've got module 10 VBA.xlsm. So both the files have now opened, which you can see VBA file. And if I go to switch windows, I've got module 10 VBA which is open and module 10 VBA events and user form. So all the files have opened. So this is how VBA can be used. By recording your steps once, you can run those steps again and again, and Excel will perform the same operations, and then you do not need or require any manual intervention. Now over here we've just opened two files, but what if we want to copy some data also from these two files to our file VBA file.xlsm? So let's see when we record a macro how this will look like. So let me just close the other two files now because I want to record that particular action also. Now I'll click on record macro again. Let it be called macro 3. OK. I'll go to open. I'll open events and user form file. Now in the events and user form file, I'm copying this data from sheet Excel underscore table. And now I'll go back to my original file, VBA file, and I'll click on paste. Now I'll again go back to my file events and user form and I'll close it. Now I'll again go to open. I'll open the second file, which is module 10 VBA. Now in module 10 VBA, I've got data on sheet 3. I've already copied the headers from the first file, so I don't need to copy them again. So I'll just copy the data. and I'll go back to my original file and I'll paste it here. Now again I'll go back to module 10 VBA. I'll close this file and now I'll stop recording. So let's see how this VBA code looks like. Visual Basic. So this is my macro 3. So over here we are opening the first file, module 10 events and user form. Then if you may remember, we initially put our cursor on cell A1 and then we started copying by moving our cursor to the right side, and then we selected the rows by clicking on the down arrow. So all these actions are being recorded over here. Then my selection was copied. Then over here I went back to my original file, VBA file.xlsm, and I pasted because my cursor was already on cell A1. So whatever I had selected from my initial file, it got pasted, and I then selected the next cell, which was cell A5. Then I went back to events and user form, and over here I closed this file. I then opened the second file, which was module 10 VBA.xlsm. I selected the range from A2 onwards because if you may remember, we did not copy the header, which was in the first row. So we selected everything from row 2 onwards, and then we copied that. We again went back to our original file, we pasted it. Then we sort of removed our cut copy mode by pressing an escape key. We then went back to our module 10 VBA.xlsm, we closed it, and then in our original file VBA file.xlsm, we just selected the first cell A1. So now I've got this macro. Let's see if I run this macro, will those same steps or will the data get copied automatically? So for that, I'll first delete this data. Now I'll just run this. So as you can see, all the data has got copied properly. Now I'll go to sheet 1 where I've written this VBA code. This is the first VBA code. So in module 2, we had a command like this. I'll just copy this. If you look at it, this particular command is same as this command. It is just that this particular command is using a keyword file name. But if you omit file name and you use brackets, then you are good to go. So this was the first macro where we opened the two files, events and user form and module 10 VBA.xlsm. Now this is the macro where we are copying data from the two files. So all we are doing is we are opening the first file, events and user form. We are going to sheet Excel table. We are copying the data from the range A1 to E4. Once we've copied, we go back to our original file, VBA file.xlsm. We go to sheet 1 of this particular file. As there is just one sheet over here, we select cell A1 and we click on paste. Then we go to our second file, module 10 VBA.xlsm. We go to sheet 3 of this file. We select data from A2 to E4. As the first row consisted of headers, column headers, which we had already copied, so we did not copy them. We copied this data, we went back to our original file and we pasted the data over there. The last thing what I've done over here is I've just closed the two files, events and user form and module 10 VBA.xlsm. So this code is exactly the same as what we had recorded over here. Just that over here I'm specifying the worksheet names and the file names properly. So that's about it. But otherwise the two codes are exactly the same. In the initial example where we were copying the data, we were sure that our data is between A1 and E4 or A2 and E4 only. But say if I've got 100 files and all these files have varying data. So one has say 100 rows of data, the other one has 20 rows of data. and I've got a task to copy and paste the data on a daily basis. So every day it will not be possible for me to open each of these files and select the range or pass the range over here in my VBA program. So this is where the need arises of dynamically passing the range. So all I'm pretty clear about is that, okay, my data will start from second row or first row, but in order to calculate till which row my data is present, I use a function called count a. So this particular way of dynamically passing ranges is something which is used across industries, as automation saves a lot of time, thus increasing productivity of both the company and the employee as well. So now let's assume that I'm pretty clear that my data will start from column A. And what count a function does is it will count the number of rows in column A which are populated. And on the basis of that, it will return me a value. So let's just run this and let's see how this works. So let me just clear this first. And I'll run this one step at a time so that you know what I'm trying to say over here. So I'll click on step into. So step into is one of the options which is used while debugging a program, but we'll discuss that later. But let's just see how this works. So now this opens the file, and right now in my file module 10 events and user form, this particular sheet excel underscore table gets activated, or basically my cursor goes to this particular sheet. Now, right now, my last filled row is 0. So as soon as I run this particular command, you will see the value of last filled row changing. So now if I hover my cursor over last filled row, it shows 4. So basically what this tells me is that in column A, I've got data till row 4. Now I'll just reset it. So now this particular value last filled row will be passed on dynamically to this particular range. Now my range will be A1 to E4. What if my data was till say 6? So it will dynamically pass it to A1 colon E6. So this is how you can pass on values dynamically. I will be providing this particular code along with the deck so that you can play around with it. And if you have any questions, then do let me know.